Hi, my name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education at the Davis Phinney Foundation, and today I am here with one of our Davis Phinney Foundation ambassadors and a member of our YOPD Council, Erin Michael. How you doing, Erin?
I'm well. Hello.
Oh, good. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your experience diagnosed with YOPD. So what was it like when you were diagnosed? How old were you, and what was that process like? Did you accept it right away? Was it just totally out of nowhere, that kind of thing?
Sure. So I was diagnosed 2 years ago. So I was diagnosed at 41 years of age. And I initially went in thinking I had pulled a muscle in my arm. So I was a VP of a sales unit for work, and I traveled quite a bit and just thought from putting my luggage up and everything like that, that I had just pulled a muscle in my arm. So my arm had lost its grip. I was unable to write very well, unable to grasp things. So went to a couple of doctors. The last one I went to finally referred me over to a neurologist. And when I went in to speak to them, they actually had a fellow come in and talk to me. And he's like, walk up and down the hall, ask me a few questions, had to do the little tit, 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 little chirpies. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go and get the doctor. And then the doctor comes in and he's just like, you have Parkinson's. And I went by myself because I wasn't expecting to have anything major come out of it. So as soon as I was told that, I kind of blanked out and spaced out to everything else that the doctor was telling me. And just my eyes started welling up. I thought it was the end of the world. So I kind of just grabbed the paperwork and left and broke down a little bit in my car, called my husband. And then from there, we kind of regrouped. And of course, I went and got a second opinion because I started doing the thing that everybody does initially and went online and started doing research, which hindsight is probably not the best way to manage it. But one of the things I did find out is I was at the end of the standard deviation of being typical for someone to be diagnosed with Parkinson's. I was female, I was young, didn't run in my family, didn't have a history of it. So I'm like, it's got to be something else. So I went down a path for a couple of months where I, solicited opinions from other doctors and kind of tried to self-diagnose a little bit before I finally came to terms and said, okay, this is what it is. It's not the end of the world. Let's just figure out a plan that's going to work for me and move forward from there.
Were there other doctors or specialists that you'd gone to where you thought, oh, maybe it's this, or your doctor said, maybe I think it's this, like a couple of different misdiagnoses along the way, or at least sort of directions along the way?
Yes. So I did go to a cardiovascular doctor as well. So on one of my trips to my Parkinson's doctor, she's like, what are your biggest complaints? And I'm like, well, I'm super dizzy every time I stand up. Just the concentration and the grip strength. And so we did some testing while I was seeing her for, I guess you can call it, I don't know, like laying down with your blood pressure and then standing up and all of that type of stuff. And she had said, well, I think that you might have POTS as well. So I went to go see a cardiologist for that because I was having such a decrease in my pulse from when I went from laying down to standing up. And she said, and I think that we're hearing that your heart's not beating correctly, or it has a murmur or something. So I went to go see a cardiologist. He did echocardiograms and all that stuff, or a heart monitor. And he's like, no, everything seems to be okay. So who knows? I still get extremely dizzy, and I'm told now it could be a result of the medication, the carbidopa, levodopa. So time will tell, but that is one of the biggest complaints that I have. Is just, I used to be really big into fitness and all that type of stuff, and now I don't have the energy to do it. Or if I go running or anything like that, I'll get those black tunnel vision spots like right before you pass out. So it's very frustrating, but working through it.
That is frustrating.
Yeah.
Did you find it challenging, or have you over the past couple of years, to find other people who are going through something similar? They're of working age, they have young families, they're not thinking about retirement, so they're thinking about long-term, how am I going to do this? Was it hard to find a community of those people?
So initially I turned to Facebook just because of accessibility and started looking at a few of the groups that were listed there. I did have some concerns about joining some that were public at first because I didn't come out right away at work. And I'm like, I don't need anybody seeing that I'm part of this group and starting to ask questions. Eventually that all changed, of course, but I got involved in a couple of groups who I didn't like the tone of the groups per se. Like everybody's like, oh, you're going to have to get on disability right away. And, you know, you're not going to be able to do this and do that. And I'm like, well, I love my job. I don't want to just throw in the towel and say, hey, I have to quit because I have this diagnosis now. And, you know, I'm still young. I've got a lot of life left ahead of me. I hope that I still have some big plans and things I want to do. So initially, yes, I was extremely challenged with finding people that I felt I could relate to and just even share the experience about Parkinson's in general, take away the young onset piece of it, but just Parkinson's in general. And then randomly, serendipity kind of stepped in, and because you can't sleep with Parkinson's either, it's one of the symptoms. When I was up one night, I did a hashtag search on LinkedIn and just put in Parkinson's, and I read an article from somebody who had posted something about Parkinson's, and I clicked on it, and the guy lived like 5 minutes from me. And I'm like, okay, this has to be, I have to meet this gentleman because the odds of this happening are truly remarkable. So I met up with him, and he instantly put me at ease, put me in touch with a bunch of people within my age group. He had, for me, all of the answers that I needed. He's like, Cleveland Clinic has this one young onset group, there's the Davis Phinney group, there's In Motion, which is local here to where I live. And I was just like, oh my God, this is just what I needed. There is hope. So I'm so thankful every day I met this gentleman. And I've been able to navigate to a great support group and some of the people that I have met, both in my local community and online as well. So it is challenging at first, but stick with it. You will find a group that works for you. I think everybody is different in what they're looking for. And don't give up hope because there are good people out there to help you through.
Great. So when we reached out about the YOPD Council, what made you want to be part of it?
Yeah, so, you know, I do think there is a huge stigma around Parkinson's, and I think the young group specifically, you know, gets hit with, when you tell people you have Parkinson's, they're like, are you sure? That can't be, you're not 80. My grandpa had Parkinson's. How do you know you've had Parkinson's? And you face a lot of those challenges, like my attitude at work instantly changed. I was getting angry a lot quicker than I used to just because of dealing with the meds and everything else. Your whole chemistry changes. And it helped, you know, being with young people as well, and just being able to communicate with them, share experiences, help change some of the stigma. And then also just being able to change people's behavior in the way that they think and approach things, I think is extremely important. So for example, recently I refinanced my home because of COVID-19. You know, they had great interest rates. And so the only face-to-face thing I had to do was to sign a stack of papers. And I'm like, can we do this online? Can I use a stamp? Are there other options? And they're like, no, you physically have to sign hundreds of papers. And I'm like, well, I have Parkinson's. This probably isn't, you know, the best thing for me. So just kind of coaching people that you meet along the way, I think is good. And every bit that you can interact and teach somebody something, I think is a positive thing. And the last thing that I'll say about it is just my experience. I haven't had too many visible symptoms yet, but that's starting to change a little bit. And so I think I always feel paranoid when I go out. I'm like, people are looking at me, like what they're probably wondering, am I drunk? Like what's going on? And so just being young and still wanting to be social and get out and have that social life, I think it's important to be active in the community and help support each other so you don't feel alone and become a hermit in your own home.
Right. You had said that you didn't immediately go out or come out at work. What happened once you did? What was the reaction, and how did you do it?
So I finally just told them, because they kind of started making jokes about it, because I am in sales. So we'd go out and I'd have like a glass of wine at dinner, and people would be like, oh, she must have went out afterwards and she must be hungover. I'm like, well, no, that's not me anyway. But so I was finally like, look, you know, that's kind of rude. I've got a disability. And so at first, the people I told thought I was joking. They're like, really? Okay. And then the more people started to find out about it, I did find out there's a lot of inappropriateness that goes along with that. I think there's a lot of, I told HR, talked to them, but there was a lot of people who had found out that I didn't necessarily tell. So there were water cooler conversations, if you will, about what was going on in my personal life, which was hard enough already, let alone, that people are talking about it. And then when people start talking about it, they start watching you more. And so then you start feeling like you're under scrutiny. The other piece of it is I was completely taken aback at how much my HR department didn't know. As far as the benefits and disability were concerned. I'm like, hey, can I get like an audio or voice to text device? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, I'm supposed to take physical therapy. Our insurance only allows for 2 sessions because I have this diagnosis. Can I get more? And they're like, I don't know. So you kind of have to become your own advocate for yourself. But I was really, really surprised that an HR person would not know so much about how to support somebody with disabilities. And again, this was, 3 years ago. I have since changed companies, but it was just odd. You expect HR to have some of the answers for you, and they just didn't.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you've had since being diagnosed? And then also, what are some of the silver linings that have surprised you?
I think the biggest challenge was getting the medication menu right, if you will. So, it really is just trial and error for everybody. The first one I was on was Mirapaxil. It was horrific for me personally. It did not work. And then I switched over to the carbidopa levodopa, starting on 12 pills a day, and that was extremely too many. I'm now down to 2.5 per day. So just finding the right, I know, finding the right balance that works for you, your lifestyle, and your own particular body, I think was one of the biggest challenges. And it took a couple of months, I think, to find a plan that worked for me. That I think would probably be the biggest one. Some of the silver linings, I think, is I don't get as upset as I used to about the small things in life. There are much bigger things to worry about. And when things would happen at work or in my personal life, I used to rue on them, or days later, I'd still be fussing about them. And now I'm like, it doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. Let it go. It could be worse. It can always be worse. I'm not that bad. The brain is a magnificent organ with a lot of opportunity for things to change daily. So I'm very hopeful about what the future can hold. And it's just a remarkable organ, and it's very intricate. So I think just learning more about that piece of my life and the medical care has been a blessing as well. And then just knowing the support that has been just offered to me with this group and other groups as well. Just the human factor that I found in it, that people do genuinely care. It's not at the surface level. They do care about you. They do care about what's going on in your life, whether it's related to Parkinson's or some other avenue. And the support that I've received has just been tremendous.
That's great. So last question, imagine that you have a big audience right now, because you do, and somebody has just recently been diagnosed with YOPD. They're young, they have a young family, they're working, they're scared. They're scared about the future. They're scared about how they're going to pay for this over time. What is one thing that you think is really important for them to know?
I think the first thing I would say is take a pause and breathe. I wouldn't make any rash decisions about anything right away. But having gone through this experience and just doing some things on my own that weren't related to Parkinson's, I have found out there are certain benefits that you can apply for, and certain ways that you can protect your money that there's a waiting period for. So I think just talking to somebody from a legal perspective, or somebody that you may know in that field, or from a medical perspective, or if you have a financial investment guy that you trust or girl, I would recommend talking to them to see how to protect trust wills, if you have a house that's, co-signed with your husband, or you and your husband or spouse or partner have a home together, how to protect it. So if something should happen, they can keep the house and everything doesn't go to pay medical bills and all that type of stuff. It's a very intricate process, and you have to know how to navigate through it, when to do things, and how best to protect yourself and your family.
Great. Thank you. That's excellent advice. Well, thank you so much for being here, Erin. Can't wait to see you again on our next session. And yeah, thanks for doing this.
You're very welcome.